That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that big one.
All right, welcome in everybody to the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line, we're going to have this angler. You might have heard of him. He's been doing this for a little while. He's got a rod company. You might have heard of him, his rods. You might have heard, Duckett Marine. Boyd Duckett has come on, and he is going to grace us with the legends of the sport, one of the legends of the sport, and he's going to come out here and do some talking. So, Boyd, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ed. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Oh God, no! This is it's always one of my favorite things is to let our anglers out here that are listening, our listeners especially, whether you're an angler or not, you come on and you get these guys who have done this for a living. He's the co-founder of MLF. He's got rod companies that everybody's heard of. He's got Duckett Marine. You've just done so much in this sport and made such a great thing. And one of ours is always, trying to make people a better anglers through knowledge, and having someone with the amount of knowledge that you have and being able to talk to you. It's just, this is a dream come true for a guy that loves to fish all my life as well. So thanks on that. And what we're going to target this show is some wintertime fishing, because we are in the middle of it now. We're, winter's just now kicked off. We are, 7 or 8 days in, and water temperatures are going to get cold. Lure choices change. The way these fish react change. The way they do it. And I can't think of a better guy to talk about changes and the way things happen than you. You've been doing this for a long time. You've seen these fish in all different ways. So let's talk a little. Let's jump in and talk about this a little bit about wintertime bass fishing. First of all, I want to ask you is this even one of your favorite times to fish?
Man, I tell you, wintertime, other than it's cold, okay? So, but I overcome the cold because it is the time of the year that you catch some of the biggest fish and biggest bags that you're going to catch. So yeah, I'm a big fan of wintertime fishing, and with all the great products that are out there now, good quality thermal underwear, you dress up because you don't want to be uncomfortable. But yeah, it's a fun time to fish. I'm a wintertime guy.
Okay, so that's great to hear because I've talked to some guys who are like, nope, I like summer. Yeah. And I get it. And you live on one of those great lakes. Guntersville is one of those lakes that everybody dreams of fishing, I think, because of what it's been made into. I got to fish for my first time this year. But what I liked about it the most of what I saw was the differences, the changes, the grass, the ledges, the points. It was such a really interesting lake. But how do you, I guess the best way to ask this is, how do you approach a lake come wintertime? I mean, in the summer, we see the top water and we see, people are aggressive and you go out there and you can throw stuff fast. How do you really approach a lake? And it doesn't have to be Guntersville, but just any lake in general, I guess, is how do you approach that during the winter? What's your way of, I'm going out today, this is what I'm going to start and this is what I'm going to look for?
Sure. And wintertime is very different. It depending on what part of the country you're in, and it is different from lake to lake. So talking about reservoirs, we'll stay there because rivers fish very, very different than that. But the first thing I'll tell you is if you have choices in your part of the country, in the West Coast, we have a lot of lakes on the east side that are very similar to the West Coast lakes that I fish. So not a lot of change, but when I can, I want to fish clear water. One of the toughest things to fish is cold, muddy water. So before I hook to the boat, I try to make a good choice to not have to fight that, because that can be tough. But that when you get muddy water, so let's kind of turn the page to, if I have a choice, if I can stay on the Tennessee River, which generally stays reasonably clear in the wintertime, Smith Lake, Martin, any of the Tennessee lakes, Carolina lakes. There's a lot of really clear water, or clear enough for wintertime fishing. And definitely out west, there's a lot of reservoirs that stay clear that I would call good wintertime fisheries. So I've picked that lake, and wintertime is different maybe than summer, because summer fish like to sit on cover and structure, whether it's boat docks, grass lines, shallow ledges. Tennessee River's famous for ledges. But even on my home lake, for instance, where those fish get out in the current and they want to be belly down on the bottom, they seem to act much different. So first key I'm looking for, if I've been there or haven't been there, and even at home, I'm looking for bait, because the wintertime is just a feeding time. So it doesn't change, and it's not too cold. But so if I'm targeting, and I take something that's changed winter a bunch, and we'll talk some about what I'll call traditional wintertime fishing versus new wintertime fishing.
Okay.
Traditional wintertime fishing, main lake, not more than a third back into the creeks. Bass love rock in the winter. So I'm always, any chance I get, I try to get around rock or have some rock edges. And a jig is one of the best baits you can fish in the wintertime. Fish are a little bit slower, so those slower techniques matter. And so I used to look for those and it's still very effective to look for wintering type locations. Third of the way back, close to the edge of the creek channel. Rock, like I said, is probably probably the best feature, the best time of the year that it's a positive feature, is in the wintertime. They like to be next to the hard bottom. And then a jig is probably my favorite bait in the wintertime. I've got some other techniques, but it's definitely on the deck and a starter for sure. And I'm looking for primary point, secondary point. So that was kind of my old way to start approaching. But forward-facing sonar, I don't know how many shows you've done on this, but I know it's come up a bunch. But forward-facing sonar has definitely taught us that there's a lot of wintertime fish that stay suspended. Now, I kind of knew that anyway with 2D, the spotted bass lakes that we have, and even smallmouth lakes like up in Tennessee. I would look for bait schools, still same areas of the lake, in around the creek mouth, the big creek mouth, channel bends, and I would look for my bait, but then I'd fish directly over them to stay in contact, knowing that there'd be some fish around those bait schools. With forward facing, I have learned that I don't have to have the topography that I thought I used to have.
Okay.
So it has, and there's still fish, by the way. You find a rocky point in the wintertime, secondary rocky point close to the mouth, that's going to have some bass on it.
Yeah.
But I have also learned there's a lot of suspended bait that maybe we didn't used to fish for, because number one, it's hard to catch fish in the center of that creek. Don't worry about the creek channel, just out in the middle of that opening. There's a lot of bait schools, and we would see them when we idled over them. Maybe you're in 40 and the bait is 20 feet down, but it felt like a needle in a haystack. And we didn't fish that way, but forward facing has given us the opportunity to be able to do that. So that's kind of become one of my favorite ways, is to go, I'll run, pretty fast idle, and just with my down and my sonar running, and I'm looking for bait schools. When I get in an area that I find bait, then I'll drop my trolling motor and start looking with forward facing, and I can stay with that bait. If they move, I can move my trolling motor head, determine if they're coming to me, away from me, and I can also see where there are bass suspended with them. So that's kind of a new fun way to fish in the wintertime, and the clear lakes really show that off. The clearer water, it seems like those fish don't want to be on the bottom or a lesser number, and a lot of the better fish are out chasing that open water. So that's what I'm starting with. I'm going and I'm looking for, open water bait schools. I'm not going to ignore those little rock points and places that I want to throw a jig on, and I catch some big fish doing that. But that's my beginning. Then when I get out there, you're gonna have to determine what bait categories you're gonna fish with. If you're on a lake and the bait is 8 to 10 feet down, maybe your lake has some shallower flats, 15 feet, the bait's only down 10. Then I love a jerk bait whenever you can throw that. But most of the jerk baits, unless you get a jerk bait that's, sinks quickly and is designed to fish, forward facing, we call everything that now, but that's kind of what they were designed for. Still like a jerk bait a lot. We have one that we make at Duckett Fishing, build a lot of baits, as you're aware of. We've got a new bait, the Reveal, that's about 3/4 of an ounce, and it's designed so that if, in 20 feet of water, I can, instead of trying to throw a big lip well past the fish, jerk it down, they're gone by the time you get the bait to them. And then you may never get it deep enough, where if you can throw something heavy, and get down close to that school of bait and the fish that are around that, the quicker you can get there, the better. So that's one. But maybe my favorite ahead of that, I have really done well the last 2 winters throwing small swim baits. We make a 3-inch subtle tail. It's just a little tiny 3-inch swim bait. Tail barely moves because less is better, especially when the water's cold. And fish it on a screw lock lead head, a 1/4 ounce, not real heavy. You want it to be a real soft, feel. You don't want to drop fast and throw it, let it fall. And that's probably my favorite technique the last couple of years is to go find those open water fish, fire a swim bait over there. You got to have to learn how to use your active target. Right. Follow your bait down at least to the depth where you're in the right location. And you don't have to specifically, I have learned this, you don't have to specifically throw to the fish. In other words, you can see a blob out there 40 or 50 feet, and you can throw to them and catch them. But those fish are really paying attention to those bait balls. And I have learned that if I just get my subtle tail, or you get whatever little swim bait you throw, if I can get it close to that bait ball and come through it and come out of it or go by it, those fish will come to it. So, don't feel obligated to see one on a bass, so to speak, on your forward facing. You can, you get around those bait balls, you're going to start catching some bass.
Yeah. And that, that's very interesting you just said that, and that's one of the things that I was, when you first started talking about, we're out in open water again, we're fishing. I don't want to, I don't want to say you're old, but I want to say you've seen this new way of fishing, and that's the way you put it. This is the new way of fishing. You're forward-facing sonar, but you've been through all of it. You've seen just the 2D. You've seen just. I don't know that you were back when it was just flashers, but
I was back. I started traveling in 1977. To put it, I left my house, started traveling fishing tournaments. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I did it. And started in 1977. So we were flashers only when I first started trying to tournament fish.
There's no way that you could ever say, oh man, I could see this trend, this coming in the future, this kind of way of going. But as you say, traditional and then new age, and this is completely new now. I mean, the way that, and you learning how to do it, learning how to fish this way, breaking down winter time this way. Could you ever imagine that they would be in this position that we're in now, to where wintertime fishing has become, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a heck of a lot easier than it was back when it was just flashers.
Hi, this is Josh McMurray. I'm the city manager for the city of Oakley. We're located on the Delta. We have a beautiful shoreline, and we really want to promote the city as the gateway to the Delta and showcase everything that we have to offer. We have a beautiful downtown that's expanding, brand new restaurants. What we're trying to do is build that brand to make sure that people know that you can come to Oakley and you can do everything that you want associated with the Delta, and you can still stay here, eat here, and have a good time in a very family-friendly and safe environment.
It is definitely easier, and no, you don't really see it necessarily coming.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've learned through the years, and all of us, me and Gary Klein and Biffle and all the old guys, we talk about, and when we sit around and have supper, we complain about the changes. But if you don't stay open-minded to go learn, when forward-facing came out, the very first unit, the Garmin unit, I run Lowrance today, and I'm very pleased, feel like that's, for me, the best unit that's available. But that original Garmin unit, I got one the very first year because if you fall behind, you are going to be behind. You have to make a choice. There's economic spending that's needed. Yeah. And whether it's fair or not fair, I know there's a lot of controversy around forward facing, but guys, let me tell you, it ain't going away.
Right.
And so buy one. I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna have to go learn how to use it, because there's still plenty of fish, and we can talk about those traditional patterns and traditional ways to find, but you're leaving out a whole new group of fish that haven't been traditionally fished for, and they're feeding fish. See, a lot of what I used to fish for, looking for rock veins, and I might find them on my 2D down, and I would see them, welded to the bottom, in a gravelly area in 20 feet of water off the creek channel, whatever. I could catch those fish, but they weren't really actively feeding. You had to work pretty hard to catch them.
Right.
Where these fish that we target with forward facing, they're already in go mode. They're there to eat. If they're not, they'll be somewhere else. They'll be back down on the bottom when they're not feeding. So you're chasing a fish that, quite honestly, is pretty easy to catch. Hey, if you're running down the lake in the summertime and they come up schooling, you're going to stop and throw?
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to stop and throw because those fish are in go mode.
Right. I think that the way you started that whole this whole conversation with I love to fish a jig, and this is such a great time of year to fish a jig, and then towards the middle of it, you're like, with the forward facing sonar. Now all of a sudden you're back to bait fish, and you're throwing baits that are the fish will come to it, and they will. You've seen it. You've seen these transitions, but you still like that jig. And when I'm still in that mentality of, I feel like jigs are so important this time of year too, because, like you said, water's cold, fish are sluggish. You think of a jig, but now you're already talking about, hey, this paddle tail, this works. You still want it to be a slower fall, but I think the way that you're addressing that, all of a sudden it changes to the time of, not to the time of year, to the time that we live in, and with this forward-facing sonar. And there's new ways to go after these fish. And that's what you're really talking about here, is the different ways to get away from, just like you said, don't forget about those old way, the rocky points and the gravel bottoms. And that's right. Don't forget about those. But with the new technology, remember that they're still good fish. And I'm guessing that you're still catching pretty decent sized fish out on those schoolers, right?
Absolutely. Actually, the weights at Gunnersville, the last 2 winters, the weights at Gunnersville have gone up from traditional, and Gunnersville's a good lake. But our wintertime weights, 22 to 24, you had a real good chance in the winter of winning. It's not spring, they're not on the bank yet, but those were good bags. Those aren't good bags anymore. And it's the open water fish. It's the ones chasing that bait. Those bigger fish are staying suspended out there. New Year's Day, we always have Black Friday and New Year's Day. There's a group that runs just a local tournament on Gunnersville, but it's popular 70, 80 boats,
Hmm.
and always there's that on New Year's Day, and a lot of the guys fish it. It's not closed at Guntersville. A lot of pros and guides can't fish the regular Saturday events,
Right.
but New Year's Day they can. My sales manager at Duckett Fishing, Brad Abelman is his name. Brad had 27 and a half all forward fish and didn't get a check this year.
That's
27 and a half and didn't get a check.
That's
To
impressive.
32 that's impressive. And remember guys, Guntersville is not like Chick. There are no Florida strain in Guntersville. They're northerns. They're all northerns. So it's not 8, 9, and 10 pounders. We don't have those. When you see a 30-pound bag, it's it was 32 something that won.
Wow.
It's 5, 6 plus fish.
Yeah.
Is what it is. And threw back a bunch of 4 and 5 pounders to get that kind of bag. So it's an impressive way to fish. So yeah, we're catching a lot of those fish that we just didn't used to fish for. Kind of reminds me of the A-rig, which has cycled. And I'm not sure that forward-facing fish won't decline, not the fish population, but fish get smart quick. When the A-rig came out, we learned to fish for fish that we never fished for in the old days. Open water fish, throwing those A-rigs, they would strike that where we couldn't catch them, and quite honestly, they didn't bite the other baits as well.
Right.
Well, they have become, because they were born on the Tennessee River, they're not nearly as effective. You can still catch fish with them, but they're not winning tournaments anymore. It's crazy. And so, because of the pressure on some of these open water fish, now the current deal, and not just here, the spotted bass tournaments on Smith Lake or down at Martin, smallmouth tournaments, up at, Douglas or Cherokee or wherever, we've had to downsize. And I'm sure the West Coast reservoirs, they get a lot of pressure. And I know I've seen videos of those guys out there, and they're throwing 3-inch swim baits on 6-pound line, and they're catching more big ones than they are throwing 7-inch swim baits. Not that you can't still catch them, but yeah, it's a way. We have learned that those big fish, if you get around them when they're eating, threadfin shad, they like those little baits. You'll catch a lot of them instead of 4 bites a day or whatever, we used to do.
Right. Yeah. And not like you said, the fact that they had 30 something pounds and they threw fish back. So it wasn't, we caught 5 fish and they were just good fish. They cold threw fish to get up to that, level. Yeah. So it's impressive to see that even in wintertime, even with the cold waters, you can still go out and catch those fish. And it's more aggressive, I guess, now, because like you said, you're looking for fish that are already turned on and are wanting to feed. So now you're looking for those fish, where I think back in the past, it was you were fishing a spot rather than you were fishing, or an area rather than you were fishing the fish. And I think that's so important now, is that now the way things are is you can fish for the fish and not just an area.
That's right. It just makes you so much more efficient, and having the opportunity to fish for feeding fish. We knew that shallow, we knew when bass are certain lakes, when your bass are super active, you get up on the points and they're up there shallow and you throw a jerk bait and you catch 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. That's a group of fish that are feeding. Right. We also learned that same group of fish on that rocky point, when they weren't feeding, fell off the edges, and you could see them down there, and you could drag a split shot Cinco or a small jig, and you can catch a few. Right. But it's much harder. It's way better when they're up there feeding, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what you're doing in the wintertime when you're chasing forward-facing fish that are on bait schools. Those fish have chosen to feed, so it's not as hard as maybe the guys think. If you're not familiar with it yet, you do have to buy the equipment. You have to get good forward-facing. If you're the active target unit's easy to use, so don't be afraid of it. It's not complicated. There's no magic. You're your your dealership or whoever rigs it does need to understand correctly how to rig forward facing on any of the brands, because it is very sensitive to interference that will really jack your screen up. You need to run independent power wire. You need to be aware of as you have voltage drop or amperage drop from your batteries. Early on, we all wanted to put an extra battery and just work off of it to not take away from our cranking battery. Maybe an individual lithium. The problem is as the day wears down, you have a voltage drop and an amperage drop, and so your unit becomes weaker by the end of the day. So now kind of what we've done is we've gone back to running a cranking lithium battery. And then if you have a charging system, I have the Powerful Charge, which allows you to go on your phone and either throw it your trolling motor batteries or your cranking battery. So I keep mine 100% on my cranking battery, and a lithium battery charges so quickly that if you run around at all, you're 100% all the time. And that's a better power source than the independent source. So we've learned a lot about forward that's helped us. Run heavy 6-gauge wire. Don't let the wire, your power wire, go into your forward unit is critical. You don't want it to lay on any other wires so that it gets any interference from any other power wires. We run it in a sleeve, a tube sleeve when we rig at Duckett Marine. We'll independently run that wire. We don't let it lay on any other wire. And those little tricks, those are, Dustin Cannell, Jacob Wheeler, level tricks. That's what the guys do. But if you don't own one or you're not comfortable with it, there's no magic to setting up your unit. If you get a new active target unit, and you can play with sensitivity. I will also say on forward facing, water turbidity, the amount of particles in the water, so the color of the water, that changes and will give you a different screen. So there's two things you really have to have the willingness to do. One is be willing to change your color palette and find one that suits you and suits the lake. So I would consider, and that's real easy in the menu to change color palette. The other thing is just to increase your gain or your sensitivity, but not to the point that you create a sunburst and it's difficult to see. So that's but once you get that set, it's pretty simple. I mean, if you've rigged the unit right, there's no magic dialing. And I know a lot of guys feel like the pros have equipment but I just told you everything we do. That's what we do that makes ours be as good as it can be. Is start with a good unit, wire it, set it up correctly. And then just get be conscious that as you change bodies of water, there may be a palette that reflects better color in your palette colors, and then just play with your sensitivity once in the morning, get it set up, and you're good.
Yeah, it's not quite as difficult as maybe it used to be with some of the things where you're changing making so many different changes every time. And even during the day, sometimes I remember the old units that you would have to change them, to get the best pictures just with 2D. And now with 3D, you think, or with forward facing, you would think it'd be even more difficult. But what you're saying is basically the initial setup, making sure your wires are done right and your battery's set right and all that, and then make your first adjustment in the morning and you're pretty much good all day.
That's it. And if you go back to the same lake, it'll stay that way forever. Yeah, it's not as difficult as I hear some of the anglers, at the boat ramp, or especially guys that don't have it or just got it,
right?
Having an illusion that it's extremely difficult, or we have some magic program that we put on ours. How come you can see yours so well? It's not that tough. You buy a new active target unit, you get your gain set to where it's as bright as it can be without getting negative, reflections that are they're blinking reflections. It's over sensitive.
Right.
Find that point. I'll tell you another key that we generally do, because your active target, when you set it on your trolling motor, the arrow on your trolling motor may or may not be straight normally is not straight with your active target transducer.
Yeah.
So, you can take a stiff wire tie.
Mm-hmm.
They also sell indicators that you screw onto your shaft. But if you center that wire tie, or you can buy that option, it's just a rod, that points. That's very helpful to let your eyes line up with the center of your cone.
Yeah.
And that way it just is a little help if you're not used to it or not exactly sure where to throw. But learn where your cone is. Throw your bait 30 feet out, and left and right till you see where the center of your cone is, where your bait is easy to see. Then throw it 40, then throw it 50, and you'll get that part down so that you'll be able to see your bait sink. Especially when you're fishing to depth, it's really critical to have that set up right. But to me, that's the new wintertime fishing, and that's kind of what we're doing, and it produces a lot of good fish. And go find the bait, which is no secret, but we're not. But it might be in the winter because people don't do it like they do in the summer.
Tackle Warehouse has been the premier online tackle shop since 2003, with a huge selection of not only the latest and greatest from the biggest brands, but the hard-to-find regional specialties as well. Tackle Warehouse. Click, save, fish.
Right. I mean, I think during the summer, I don't want to say the fish can give themselves away, but they can really give themselves away. I mean, they go out and they're active and it's warm and they're chasing bait fish that are up on the surface, and you see the disruption, you see the movement. But when, like what you just said here, they're out in the middle of a channel that you would never even think of going to fish. And like you said, even in the past where you would idle over them, you would see these fish in this body of water, you'd see them at 25, 30, 40 feet. And it's like, do we fish for them? I don't know. It's just, I gotta cover. That's all gone now. That's all a part of this new technology. The days of taking a Carolina rig and casting it 375 times in 1,800 different directions and covering as much water as you possibly can is probably gone now. I mean, for the people, I guess for the people who can afford the forward-facing sonar stuff. If you can't afford it, I mean, it's only 358 more days till Christmas, so get your list going.
That's exactly right.
And it is, and I think one of the most important things you said right there was make sure that or have someone install it that actually knows what they're doing. And it made me laugh because I had a friend of mine who's very knowledgeable, knew how to do it, or just knew he knew how to do it, decided to get it all set up, and couldn't figure out why he kept seeing his motor on the screen when he did it, and he installed it completely backwards. So
there you go.
You know who you are, and so and he was down there and it was funny because he was fishing the Tennessee River, and he's like, all I could see was the engine turning, the prop turning.
That's too funny.
So.
Get it set up right. Go to somebody that knows how to set it up right.
I guess one of the other things I was going to ask is you named all three in there. You're talking largemouth. Now you got northern strain, you've got Florida strain, and then you have spotted bass, and you've got smallmouth. Is there one of those that you personally love to fish for in the winter? I mean, I think out here in the West, we have ours is spotted bass. Obviously, most people just go in the winter. Spotted bass are way easier to catch. Let's go do that. But you don't have a ton of options like that down there. You have all the fish down there, but some lakes. What's your one that you go to?
Yeah, I gotta admit that I really enjoy light line fishing for spotted bass in the wintertime.
Okay.
I live on Lake Gunnersville, okay, so I go chase big largemouth on Gunnersville, but if I have a day trip and I tow my boat someplace other than my house, I go over to Smith Lake and fish for spotted bass. They're a blast, and one of the reasons is what you just said. If it's not a great day, weather's not good, fish. We all know, man, some days are good and bad when it comes to fishing. But spotted bass, you can catch them in the winter every day. Like there isn't bad weather for spotted bass. And so if you want to have fun and you want to go catch fish, they're also a great fish to learn forward facing because they're so aggressive, more so than largemouth. If you're learning, I know, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever I got probably 5 years ago now, I got my first Garmin unit. I went to Smith because I knew I could catch them.
Yeah.
And because they're much easier, and just I learned how to catch those open water spots, and then I converted what I learned. I went through my trial and error on what I did wrong, and then took that back to the largemouth, which can be more difficult to catch. So yeah, smart, and it's just fun anyway, man.
Yeah.
A 2.5 or 3 pound spotted bass on 6 pound line is a blast. If you don't like that, you don't need to fish. Something's wrong with you.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't know. It's kind of lost here. In California, we're kind of spoiled that way because we do have, like, literally 35 minutes from me is Bullard's Bar Reservoir. Those of you out there listening right now, you know what that is. I mean, that's a lake that has been the world record's been broken there 3 or 4 times. I mean, it's catching an 11 pounder is, 9 pounders, 8 pound spotted bass, 9 pound spotted bass. It's right there. It can be done. And it starts right now. Wintertime is the best time to fish that lake. So, I'll be heading that way soon myself, but it's one of those things. The larger spots are eating right then. Do you, you talk about 2, 3, 4 pounders out, your way. What is the difference that you think between those spots and those largemouth? What makes it that way? Is it just the fish itself is naturally aggressive? Is it because it's a natural river fish? I mean, largemouth, they seem like they still got to eat. They still got to, they can't just starve themselves all winter. They still come out big. What is it that we are missing that, a guy like yourself who's been out there, what is it about the largemouth that we just don't see, that we just stopped? I don't want to say we stopped targeting them, but we would leave from largemouth to spots. I guess I missed it. And in the middle of all that, we'd never talk about, I hardly ever hear anybody talk about cold water smallmouth fishing. So I'm always intrigued by this.
Yeah, cold water smallmouth fishing is fantastic. When I lived in Tennessee for 10 years, and that's what I targeted in the wintertime, I still go back up there and fish. And we have some good areas. The stretch of the river below the dam at Gunnersville, which is really the top of Wheeler, is really good for smallmouth. But just to stay with the spot specifically, I feel like a spotted bass is the most aggressive personality. That's what makes them easier to catch. They bite. It's as simple as that. Smallmouth are probably the second most aggressive, and so they're easier to catch. Largemouth are more choosy, and they're not as aggressive as, definitely compared to a spot. It's just not the same. For those, go to Bullard Bar or any of the guys that fish any of the West Coast lakes that have spots, Shasta, when they spawn, it's one cast.
Yeah.
It's one cast. You take a Florida strain. If you go to Toho in March, when they're on the bed, it can easily be 30 minutes or 45 minutes to catch a Florida strain. Just the personality of the fish. You go see a spotted bass locked on the bed and fire something over there, they're probably going to eat it, right?
Right.
They're just aggressive fish. Smallmouth are too, like that. Yeah. It's the personality of the fish, I think, that makes it different.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to know, because I think that's the personality of the fish, but does it change, I guess, with the season? Because I know that given the option in, let's give it June, you're probably going to go and look for largemouth rather than look for spots. Does the weather, does the temperature, does that change what it is? Or is it just the fact that, I guess, just like with, looking for those aggressive fish or looking for those already ready to eat fish, or do largemouth become that as the temperature gets more to their desirable range? do they ever overtake a spotted bass, I guess, as the more aggressive fish?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that they're, I think that really, because they're all, cold-blooded creatures,
Right.
but a spot in the winter is still more aggressive, and the same thing in the summertime. But they do, warm temperature definitely helps a black bass be more aggressive.
Right.
And chase baits and all those things. And all of them get some harder to catch in the winter. Their metabolism slows down, and they, you can't, a lot of times the presentation, it's like the weight you talked about earlier with these swim baits. In the summertime, when I'm ledge fishing at Guntersville, I might throw, a small swim bait, but I'm probably throwing it on, a half-ounce head or a 3/8 ounce head. I'm winding it faster. I'm covering water faster, and they'll still chase it and bite it. But even fishing 20 feet deep, I'm 6-pound line and a 1/4 ounce head on a 3-inch swim bait. And that's for that slower, more lethargic looking presentation. I mean, I'm going to throw it down there. I'm going to shake it some. I'm going to wind it slowly. I don't want that fast movement, and it makes all the difference in the world. So I think they all get more lethargic, but you're just really noticing the difference in the personality of those species.
Okay. That's what I wanted, to basically let people know is it's like, this is why, guys like yourself, you change it up and go, oh no, I'm gonna go catch some of them spots. They're just a better fish to fish in the winter. It's more fun. And then it's kind of like back to normal when the water warms up, I'm going to go out and look for these big ones. Cause like you said,
that's right.
this, you don't really have a bunch of giant fish in Guntersville. It's not that you have, 15, 20, 8 or 16-pound fish on average in there. A good 6 and 7 pound fish is a monster in there. Whereas here, we got Florida strainage everywhere, and if you're not catching, some days, if you're not catching 8, 9, 10 pounders on a regular basis, you're really not even, like you said, you're not going to cash a check. So it does change, it does. And it's a lot of fun. We've got about, looks like 19 more minutes here. And my boss, we talked before the show, but my boss had asked me, he is starting the BAM tour this year. And he specifically said, hey, will you ask Boyd for some pointers? And would you be, starting this whole, it's kind of a newer thing, this MLF thing, and, it seems like it's going to be around for a minute, and it's probably doing pretty well. You guys have made all kinds of new decisions, and the whole talking about, in everything you said in there, change happens, and, talking about forward facing sonar at the time as you were, hey, change happens, and these things and new things are coming along. And with MLF, you guys did that. You changed a bunch of stuff. You know what? You revolutionized the sport, in my opinion. The way that it's done, the way that you've done it, the ideas you come up with, the making it, now it's going to be a little smaller, but it's also going to be more elite. Guys are going to really have to work their tails off to stay up there and be professional anglers. Well, you're going to have to do it. But Mark's, starting this thing out, and he's asked me specifically, could you just ask him what's the biggest pointers he can kind of give us for starting out here in the West Coast? That's been, the West Coast has been off the radar for a long time. It's on the radar, I guess, but it's still off the radar for professional fishing in general. But what could, you give us to really focus on to try to make this the best tour we can make it for the anglers coming up?
Tired of searching through ads to find bass articles in your favorite fishing magazine? Well, we have a solution for that. Introducing Bass Angler Magazine, with over 30 articles in every issue, filled with tips and techniques to help you catch more fish. Follow the pros as they publish the most up-to-date seasonal methods to catching bigger bass. Whether you're a beginner or professional angler, make Bass Angler Magazine part of your gear today. Be a part of the fastest growing bass publication in the nation. Log on to bassanglermag.com with code TV and save 20% when you subscribe now.
Well, and that's a good question. And I'll say first that I definitely appreciate you guys' energy in providing some more tournament opportunities for the guys on the West Coast. I have a lot of friends out there that fish, a lot of friends, pros that are from the West Coast, and we talk a lot about the West Coast. You have some challenges, and we still have our Toyota series. We run our Western series on our Toyota series. It's not as well participated as we would like for it to be, but we don't want to pull off the West Coast either. We did run BFLs there at one time, but honestly, the format that works great for us on the eastern half of the country doesn't work as well for the West Coast guys because we didn't have the participation needed to make it work economically. We don't want to run a tournament trail and lose money running it. We don't, it's got to be break even or better, guys. It's a business at the end of the day. So, so some of the challenges for the West Coast, and I'll talk about us and then we'll talk about you specifically, but for any of the national tours, because the majority of the anglers are not West, all the championships and all seem to be East. And that choice, and that's hard on the West Coast guys. I know that when we have interacted with the guys that fish our Toyota series, that's one of the things they've said, hey, we love fishing them, but then when we make the Toyota Series Championship, which is a great event, pays $200,000, I mean, it's a big deal. But we always have to come east and travel across the country to do it. So there's this geographic, divide. So I say that because one of your advantages, there's two things that I would, that lends me to offer. One is everybody says the West, but the West is massive. It's a lot of area. I mean,
really is.
You can't just say I got a West Coast trail and somebody from Havasu has to fish Clear Lake. Oh, that's like us going to New York.
Yep.
I mean, it's big out there. So thinking strategically about where to set your tournaments, and so that your tournament trail, or certainly individual events, but if it's tournament trail, some I think that have tried to be successful on the West tried to include Mojave and Havasu and Meade in the same schedule that you have, Clear Lake and the Delta and those events, and that's too much. That's too big, I think. So that would be one suggestion: is pick an area. You may have multiple divisions, but stay close enough that the anglers that follow you, can afford to travel and fish your events. So that's one. The second thing that I think is really important, because it's a unique group of tournament anglers, and you guys will do this well because you serve anglers now, communicate with your anglers. I think a lot of the tours and the new West Coast things that have come and go through time came and brought their program to the West Coast. And then it didn't satisfy or work for those customers, those participants, because they have some unique challenges on the West Coast, some of the things I talked about.
Yeah.
So, if we get the opportunity to expand, we love having the Toyota series out there, but if we, choose to expand BFLs, which are always a consideration for us, that'd be the first thing I'd do, is try to, get the guys that know the tournament guys on the West Coast and talk about where those divisions should be, and try to find a way to and listen to what their challenges are. And so I think that is maybe step one for you guys. I don't know where you're planning on running them or whatever, or how big you want to be, but communicate with the tournament directors that have worked out there, with the guys that have fished. You got some great tournament anglers out there that have fished everybody's division, everybody that's come out there, and they've experienced what they like about it and what they don't like about it, and just listen to them. This is what doesn't work for us. and then you'll probably have a successful tournament trail.
Yeah, I think to me those are very good. I mean, honestly, we are, this year it's our first year, so we are. I mean, we're going to be in Washington, we're going to be in Oregon, we're going to be in California, we're going to be in Arizona. So, like you said, I recently have been dealt with this, and I've been on the East Coast quite a bit, and you're so accurate in the fact that you have this is why I think you're right in the fact that traveling back there is so much easier than traveling here. Yes, going from Alabama to New York is a long ways, but going from Alabama to Tennessee, and all of a sudden you have 3 lakes there. Going to Georgia, and you've got 5 or 6 lakes there that you can fish, 10 that you focus on. It's just easier. And out here, you're right, it's so vast, and I think we lose sight of that, is how vast the West Coast is, because every professional angler that I've ever talked to back on the East Coast, guys like Shaw Grigsby. I mean, I said, Shaw, are you guys just afraid to come out here? I asked him that question. He's like, not even close. He said, but I can tell you right now, it's so tough to go from Florida to California and then go out there and fish and try to do well. It's enormous. You may get the Delta and Clear Lake right there, but like you said, I think those are great points. And I really appreciate, you saying that, because that's one of the things we really do need to do, is listen to our anglers and understand what their concerns are for what we need to do and how far we need to go and where we need to create our divisions, because there are a lot of lakes here and there's a lot of good fishing out here, and I think people will can do well.
Yep, there are, and you gotta figure out what the guys are willing to tolerate, and then obviously you cover the sport, so you understand. I don't have to tell you about the importance of integrity of a tournament, and make sure that you have a good tournament director and that rules are followed, and you don't let guys break rules, and but I'm kind of giving you the obvious, because you guys will do a great job with that, I'm certain.
No, that's important. Yeah, I think that's important what you just said. I mean, I feel like it has been out here, and anybody listening out there now, they kind of know. I mean, rules get broken, and people just kind of like, whatever. It was a small rule, and I've seen, and I've watched your shows, and I've seen and if a rule gets broken, a rule gets broken. And if you're disqualified, you're disqualified. That's on you, not on us. We gave you the rules, you didn't follow them, you're out. Sorry. Don't do it again.
Yeah, we catch a lot of social media heat, quite honestly, because unlike previous, the previous tournament organizations in my lifetime, I felt like they only investigated the obvious, or they only investigated the public. We investigate everything. Which ends up, because people hear pieces about this and about that, it's because we investigate all of it. We really do our very best to, and we're pretty tough, and we have, time penalties and fine penalties, anywhere from disqualification to 30 minutes to 1 whole period, or whatever the punishment should be. But we're we're the strictest there's ever been when it comes to chasing that down, and that it can be misrepresented in that people look over and they go, God, I got all kinds of problems over there. No, the truth is we have all kinds of investigation. Doesn't make a guy guilty because you did a full investigation to make sure that they didn't break a rule.
Right.
So, but ultimately, when the anglers see and watch that unfold and see that, then they have confidence that, because they're paying entry fees, and last thing you want to do is, fight hard and let a guy break a rule or get information during or no information time, or you don't want somebody to have an advantage, right? You want an equal playing field. That's what matters. That's all an angler wants, is an equal playing field.
Absolutely. I mean,
you have to make sure that happens.
in every sport out there, there's an equal playing field that everybody goes to. Hey, a basketball court is always the same dimension. A baseball field is always the same dimension. And everything is done this way or right because of that. And I think that we are a sport that should be just as, if not more strict, because of the level that we're at. We're not as big as the NFL. We're not as big as this, MLB or any of those other ones, but we should be, or we could be. But I think what you just said is what it starts at: being fair and having rules that everybody has to follow.
That's right, and enforce those rules, and then your guys will have a good time, and they won't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and I the guys like Mark who have fished the events like yours, and he has been out there and done it, and that's one of the things that I think that he really brings to this is I've seen him, flat out, hey, don't talk to me about this. I got to go there, and this is a rule I can't break. So he understands that it's
right.
there.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right.
Well, Boyd, I want to just first to say thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate this. If you haven't learned anything from listening to Boyd talk here, listen again. I don't know what to tell you, because you just got a bunch of knowledge out there about this time of year and how to approach some lakes and how to fish them, and different lures and different things to try and get in there and spend some money. He definitely told you go spend some money on how to on this forward facing sonar, because like you said, it ain't going away and you better get used to it. So thank you for coming on and doing this show, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of you guys, you've got a great magazine, and it's it's not fluff. There's a lot of meat in there too, and so I always read it. I appreciate getting it. I love to get it and read it. So have a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate you asking me to be on, and I'm available anytime.
Hey, I feel like this was a great way to kick off the year. This is our first show of the new year, and I think it's starting off pretty much how this year might go. You're stuck in Florida. trying to get home.
I can't get home. I'm down here. We're having our Major League Fishing college national championship is this week on Toho. So I came down to speak at the meeting and meet with some sponsors down here. Then we had this big front. I actually was headed back today, and I'm trapped waiting on weather. So because all the airplanes are down, so hanging out a day.
Hey, at least the door hasn't flown off your plane yet, right? So
life's okay. Yeah, life's okay.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll wrap this show up. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. I hope you got a good, like this show a lot. It was a great for me to, this is an interview I've been trying to get him on the air since at the Red Crest last year, I believe it was, is where we met and put this together. So sometimes some guys are just busy out there, but I really appreciate it. And we will talk to you the next time.
All right, Ed. Thanks, man.
All right. Great night.